the grief was still a raw, open wound. Just days after burying my only daughter, Clara, I was standing on the curb with my life in a single suitcase. My son-in-law, Mark, the man my daughter loved, had just thrown me out of the house I'd helped them buy. He said I was overstaying my welcome. What he didn't know was that he hadn't just evicted his grieving mother-in-law. He'd evicted the one person who held the promissory note to his entire future. My daughter Clara was my whole world. Her happiness was the only retirement plan I ever cared about. So when she and Mark wanted to buy a house 5 years ago, I was thrilled for them. What is a beautiful, split level on a quiet, tree-lined street, perfect for raising my grandkids, Lily and Tom. There was just one snag. Mark's credit was a train wreck from some bad decisions in his youth, and no bank would touch them for a mortgage big enough to afford the kind of safe, stable home my grandkids deserved. Clara came to me, her eyes swimming with a mix of hope and shame. "Mom," she said, "I don't know what to do. Mark feels like such a failure. I couldn't stand to see her light dim like that. So, I made a choice. I took a huge chunk of my retirement savings money I had guarded my entire life and offered it to them. It wasn't a gift. It was a private loan, enough to buy the house outright. We had a lawyer draw up the papers and everything, a formal promissory note secured by a lien against the property. I was, on paper, the secured creditor. But Clara had one condition. "Please, Mom," she begged, "don't tell Mark everything. He's so proud. Just tell him it was a little loan for the down payment. He never has to know the rest." She promised she'd tell him one day when he was more confident. I trusted her, and I loved him like the son I never had. So, for her sake, I agreed. The lien was officially recorded, but in our day-to-day lives, I was just Mom, the doting grandma who visited on weekends. I never ever imagined a day would come when I'd have to pull those papers out. The 2 years of Clara's illness were a nightmare of hospital visits and hushed conversations with doctors, just clinging to every scrap of hope. I moved into their guest room to help with the kids, cooking, cleaning, reading bedtime stories, anything to keep things afloat while Mark was working or by her side. After she was gone, that guest room became my little sanctuary of grief. The silence in the house was just deafening. But in the days after the funeral, something in Mark changed. The grief that had bonded us started to curdle. He grew cold and distant. He started calling at my house in this sharp, pointed way. He'd mutter under his breath about needing space and getting things back to normal. I told myself he was just grieving differently, that I needed to be patient. The final straw came a week later. I was in the kitchen, just looking through some of Clara's old recipe books, when he walked in. He wouldn't even look at me. He just crossed his arms and said, "We need to talk." He told me it was time for me to leave, that I was a constant reminder of his loss, that I was standing in the way of him and the kids moving on. I was floored. "Mark," I stammered, "this is my daughter's home. My grandchildren are here. Where am I supposed to go?" His voice was pure ice. "You have your own life. You can't stay here forever. You're a guest and you've overstayed your welcome." He actually handed me an empty box. "Pack your things. I want you out by the end of the week." The cruelty of it just knocked the wind out of me. He wasn't just kicking me out. He was trying to erase me from the life my daughter built, from the very home my sacrifice made possible. That shock turned into a cold, hard knot of anger in my stomach. He thought he was tossing out some powerless old woman. He had no clue who he was really messing with that night. I just sat in the dark, his words bouncing around my head. A guest. He'd called me a guest in the house my money paid for. The grief was still a heavy cloak, but now a steely anger was weaving its way through it. I refused to let my daughter's memory be controlled by a man this callous. I refused to let my grandchildren be raised by someone who could treat their own family with such contempt. The next morning, I drove straight to the small apartment I'd kept all these years and went to my old filing cabinet. And there it was, in a sealed envelope, the notarized promissory note and a copy of the recorded lien. My hands shook as I read the words, especially the standard acceleration clause the lawyer had insisted on for my protection. It clearly stated that upon the death of a borrower or the entire loan balance would become due without my consent. Mark, by declaring the house his and kicking me out, had triggered a default. My daughter was gone, and her part of the estate, including its debts, was now in play. I picked up the phone and called a property law specialist named Mr. Davies. I laid out the whole story, my voice quiet but steady. When I finished, he was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Ma'am, you are not just a mother-in-law. You're a secured creditor. You hold all the cards." It was like a lightning bolt. He explained that I had every legal right to call in the loan. If Mark, as the surviving owner, couldn't pay up, I could start foreclosure proceedings. Mr. Davies' first move was a cold, formal demand letter sent by certified mail. It was all business, citing the acceleration clause and demanding immediate repayment of the entire loan number I knew Mark couldn't pull out of a hat. A week later, my phone rang. It was Mark screaming, his voice cracking with disbelief. "What the hell is this? Is this some sick joke? You're trying to steal my house." I held the phone coolly to my ear. "No, Mark," I said calmly. "I'm calling in a debt, the debt for the house you just kicked me out of." He actually laughed, a bitter, nasty sound. "You gave us that money. It was a gift. You can't do this." "It was a documented, legally binding loan, Mark," I replied. "A loan secured by the property. I suggest you get a lawyer and check the public records for the lien that was recorded 5 years ago." He hung up on me. I knew he wouldn't take it seriously at first. He was too arrogant. But the legal wheels were already in motion. Mr. Davies started the formal foreclosure process. It wasn't fast. It took months of legal notices, court filings, and waiting periods, and we followed every single step by the book. Every official envelope that landed on his doorstep was a reminder of his massive mistake. Family friends started calling, confused. Some even accused me of being vindictive. I just told them it was a business matter that was being handled legally. Soon, the panic started to creep into his voicemails. They started out angry, accusing me of trying to make his kids homeless. Then they turned to pleading, offering to let me move back in. "We can just forget this whole thing." He begged in one message, his voice laced with desperation. But not once did he say he was sorry. Not once did he acknowledge how cruel he had been. He was only sorry he got caught. The day of the foreclosure auction was gray and overcast. It took place right on the county courthouse steps, a sterile, impersonal process. A few other people were milling around for other properties, but for the sale of Clara's house, only 3 people mattered. Me, Mr. Davies, and Mark, who stood off to the side. When the auctioneer called out the address, a house where I knew every creaky floorboard, my heart hammered in my chest. He announced the opening bid, which was the exact amount of the outstanding debt I was owed. Then, silence. Nobody else was going to bid on a house with a lien that large. Mark's eyes locked on mine, full of a desperate, last-ditch hope that I'd call it off. I met his gaze and held it, my face giving nothing away. Going twice. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. For Clara. For Lily and Tom. "Sold," the auctioneer declared, the gavel cracking down with a sharp bang. I had just bought it back. For the price of the loan he never paid, the house was mine. I watched Mark just crumple, his shoulders slumping as the reality finally hit him. He had lost everything, not because of me, but because of his own greed and disrespect. In the weeks that followed, Mark moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment. The law says he's still the kid's custodial parent, but his life is a shadow of what it was. I didn't throw my grandchildren out on the street. Instead, I did what I should have done from the start to protect them. I placed the house into a trust, with Lily and Tom as the only beneficiaries. I arranged it so Mark can live there with them, but he's not the owner. He lives there under the protection of my love for my daughter, a daily, inescapable reminder of his arrogance. He thought he was evicting a grieving mother he saw as a burden. He thought he was taking control of his future. But all he really did was slam the door on the decent man he could have been and open it to a lifetime of consequences. He didn't just lose a house, he lost the respect of his children, the support of his family, and the legacy of the woman who once loved him. He might have my daughter's children, but I'm the one holding their future safe and secure, far away from the grasp of his greed. What do you think? Was this justice? Or was it revenge that went too far? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you have a story about family and betrayal, I'd love to hear it. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories like this one.